Great. Welcome everyone to our virtual series today. Our topic is navigating your career path during the global pandemic. We will be joined today by a great group of people moderated by Xiaojing, who is corporate controller at PayPal and also a mentor for the Monty Jade mentorship program. Just as a reminder today, this is a recorded event. All Q&A functions are in the Zoom feature, so please look at your bottom tab or your top tab that says Q&A if you have any questions for the speakers. Please feel free to add them during that window area. And attendees, you can upvote those questions using the thumbs up button. There's also a chat room function, which is just utilized for general conversations between attendees. During the panel, panelists will not be responding to direct chats, just because they're going to be focused on the conversation at hand. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please put them into the Q&A function. Monty Jade was founded in 1989 by immigrants from Asia. They bonded together to support one another because they were under-networked and under-resourced. Through this community, billions of dollars of enterprise value was created and hundreds of companies were formed. Even to this day, Monty Jade is focused on building community. We today do this under 3 pillars. The first pillar is our interview series, such as the one we did last week, which is focused on community leaders and understanding their journey and how they overcame some of the struggles that they faced as they were building their careers. And the whole idea is to enable people to better connect with great leaders, just so we understand that they also went through a lot of struggles as they were developing. The second pillar is focused on our technology forums, in which we bring together our community to understand new ideas, mainly to focus on the opportunities as an investment and or career opportunities to look at areas and other companies to move towards. Recently, we've had hot talks on venture capital, AI, and bioscience, and we'll be having another one coming up in July. The last but most important of our pillars is our mentorship program. This is a 100% volunteer run program focused on helping build the skill sets needed for future leaders. Eastern Asians are significantly underrepresented in the leadership of many Bay Area technology companies. Today, Asians continue to lag their peers in being promoted. White males are promoted 2 times the rate of Asian males, while white females are promoted 3 times the rate of Asian females. This disparity has gotten worse over the last 2 decades, and our mentorship program strives to help address this inequality. The 6-month-long mentorship program focuses on education and deep engagement with the small mentor families to help address some of the challenges of moving up the corporate ladder. We have just started our open houses for this year's program, so if you are interested or know someone who's interested in this program, please go to our website for more details. We have a couple open houses coming down the line as well, so please again check our website. Thank you. At this time, I would like to thank our virtual series sponsor, Deloitte. It is only with their support that we can continue to create great programs such as this to help support our community. With over $46 billion in revenues and approximately 312,000 people in 150 countries, Deloitte provides audit, assurance, tax, legal, risk, financial advisory, and consulting services. They are the 4th largest privately owned company in the world, and they have been providing thought leadership to global 100 companies on how to best thrive in a post-COVID world. Our virtual series was really focused on helping support our community during the COVID-19 crisis. The first one, we really focused on opportunities in crisis and beyond. It was essentially looking at how we best navigate this situation and how we look forward towards the future. And our second event was really focused on where are some areas to focus on for success and opportunities to grow successfully during this period of time. And this is now our 3rd series, of which I will pass it to Xiaojing.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Monty Jade Virtual Forum. When we are putting together this panel, we want to bring different perspectives from different angles that could be relevant to you. Whether you are looking for a job or you want to further advance your career in your current company, our panelists have diverse backgrounds that suit this purpose. First, I want to introduce Aaron Wu. Aaron is the CEO of Essential Solutions. Essential Solutions is Silicon Valley's premier executive search firm. Aaron has been an external recruiter with more than 20 years experience. Next, Caroline Lee. Caroline was a former talent acquisition director at LinkedIn. She has over 20 years of experience working on internal recruiting team in large enterprise companies. Micheal Lin. Micheal is our former Monty peer mentor. Micheal is an HR operations manager with Waymo and was with Google before. Next, Erick Cai. Erick is also our former Monty peer mentor. Erick has been working at Apple for about 10 years in various positions from business finance analyst to most recently as a data scientist. So we're having this panel here. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. This is one of a kind that is reshaping the economic landscape. It's changing our working environment and our lifestyle. How should we think about our career path or growth when we are in this special COVID-19 environment? How can we best position ourselves when we are looking beyond the pandemic in the new normal? Before we dive into this topic, I want to launch our first polling question to get a feel about the audience base here. Today, we are going to have about 3 polling questions, so it will be along the way while we are discussing. You now see on the screen the first polling question. I will let Casey lead the first polling question here.
So the first question is, which selection below best describe your current career situation? Are you actively looking for a job? Are you potentially looking for a position outside of your current company? Are you thinking about new roles in the current company? Or are you just staying put and doing exactly what you're doing now? Can you please vote? Are we ready? Okay, here's the result. Which selection below best describe your current career situation? Majority, 39% of you guys say stay in the current position. 36% say potentially looking for position outside of the current company. And then the next group is actively looking for a job. And then the other response, 3 of you think about new role in the current company. Now, I think our panelists is going to have an active discussion on those 4 choices. I'm going to back to you, Xiaojing.
Thank you, Casey. Looking at the result, I think it's somewhat as I expected because we are going to talk about all 4 scenarios here. So while looking at the result, I think we designed the panel to your audience kind of interest here. So basically, I see roughly half of you guys are looking or potentially looking, or half of you guys want to think about a position or just want to stay in the current company. So maybe we start with our first scenario. If you're looking for a job, so we can start with Aaron and Caroline here. The current job market is super competitive with historical high unemployment rates. On the recruiting side, how do you see the job market lately? If someone needs to find a job, how can they land one? Aaron, do you want to start? I know this is a $1 million question, but we can talk about high level first and then dive in the detail a little bit later.
Thanks, Xiaojing. I could talk about this for days, literally. And I appreciate the introduction. And to give a little bit of context, I founded Essential Solutions in 1992. So this is literally my 4th severe downturn that I've had to live through and survive through. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of context. But if you do need to find a job in this market, I would say I would network as quickly, as tactfully aggressive, and quote unquote shamelessly, and as broadly as to as many people as you possibly can. The job market is super competitive, especially here in the Valley with a lot of the layoffs that are going on. So timing is critical. A lot of people always want to kind of rest for a little bit. I would say, I would start networking immediately, get your resume to as many targeted people that make sense for you. In terms of, the methods that work, I would say whatever's worked for you in the past, being respectful to, being COVID safe, of course. Just be mindful that a lot of people are very distracted through obviously a lot of
challenging things that are going on right now. So don't be shy in texting them, emailing them, following up. I find the spam filter is probably one of my worst enemies. I use LinkedIn, religiously. And again, not just thinking about your current network, but their network as well. Caroline, I know you have some great thoughts. Any additional?
Yeah. So here too, thank you, Xiaojing, for the introduction. I do want to clarify though that it says I'm CEO of Traverse Fitness. I'm actually in category A right now, actively looking. I had left the Ninja Warrior gym at the start of COVID when it shut down. A lot of this had to do with the commute. It was quite far from me. But what I'm finding is there are jobs out there. It is scary. It's a scary time. Like Aaron said, we have gone through this multiple times and we recover. So on the recovery, it's just a matter of how long does it take. The V comes down and the V will go back up. What I am finding out there is that there are jobs. The recruiters it feels like they're slowing down a little because they need to see where the company's going and how the company is recovering. But I will say it is super uber competitive out there. And I say that because when I am interviewing, and I've probably had around 3 interviews this week, believe that or not, when I talk to my network of people with the same skills, I know that they're talking to the same companies. So, with that in mind, I would go back to what Aaron's saying in terms of networking is really important. Everything that you would do in a non-pandemic time, you want to do that, but do it on steroids. So if that means you feel hesitant on reaching out, you want to reach out, get it done, send the email, send the LinkedIn in-mail, and take it a next step further with send the text. During this time, no one can judge you poorly or anything like that in terms of your reach out. So don't be shy with that. Aaron, are you seeing that you're getting a lot of reach outs since you're in the search world?
Yeah, a lot of, I've been talking to multiple people today that I haven't talked to over the last 10, 20 years as well. And a lot of people are kind of in that either kind of keeping an eye out, maybe not aggressively looking, but there are obviously a lot of people that are in transition as well. So I agree with Caroline 100%. At this point in time, again, I always recommend being tactful, but if you have to be shameless and you have to be aggressive, and find the right way to do it, whatever it takes. And we're here to help if there's anything we can talk to you about as well.
Yeah, and with that in mind, in terms of the tactful, I think the other important thing here when we're networking is to know what you're bringing to the table. So know your value proposition. What is it that sets you apart from the others? Because it was a little scary and daunting when I heard that my peers were interviewing for similar roles to me. And it's like, the self-doubt, that negative self-talk comes forward. And it's like, oh, they'd be really good for that. And it's like, no, wait a minute. I've got the skills for this also. So but know what your value is and stay with that. Make sure everything you are doing with regards to your resume, cover letters, emails, and your discussions are emphasizing those points. There is someone that I remember hearing, Carla Harris, talking about whenever you have a conversation, you want to make sure that the 3 adjectives you are describing yourself as is what they are taking away, because at the end of the day, decisions are being made about you while you're not in the room. So make sure you are communicating those things forward through your relentless networking.
And as Caroline.
Yeah, so I have a question. Like people may say, you guys brought out a really good point. Networking is very important, but people may say in the remote environment, from a relationship building side, I couldn't have lunch or coffee in person as before. I couldn't attend networking event in person as before. So how do you guys see from your own experience? Does that hurt people in some way?
Do you want me? I'll jump in first, Aaron. So my take on that is there's a lot of technology out there to help us. And in my mind, people want to help others. And, you know, someone who's a job seeker, I need to make it as easy as possible for them. So once I get them to say yes, I'll usually throw out the here are 3 dates and times, and I'll mix it up a little to give them flexibility to choose. I'll also figure it out on, you know, if we're nearby and if they're open to a walk together, I'm open to that too, but I'm going to suggest it in a manner that follows the COVID-19 protocols. Or I'm going to do a, hey, let's do FaceTime, or here's the Zoom link. But I'll drive it all to, again, make it as easy as possible for them to say yes.
Yeah, I agree with Caroline. I've been doing a lot of porch meetings. So we stay 6 to 10 feet away, face masks on, and I've literally probably had a dozen porch meetings in the last few weeks just to catch up with people. But again, you know, obviously there's a lot of great technology. Going back to Caroline's discussion around how to build your personal value proposition, you know, a couple additional points there. I would say, you know, basically, you know, by building your personal your personal value proposition, it started years ago, meaning that you have to make sure you do a phenomenal job in whatever you're doing today, right? And make sure you do as much as you can to help as many people as possible, because one of the most important tools for you, in addition to having a great resume that's targeted for a very specific role that you're super excited about, is make sure you have, as best you can, the power of the referral behind you. So if there's any way that you can get someone to sponsor you that's willing to slam the fist on the table, says, oh my God, you know, Caroline's amazing. In addition to all that, that puts them puts you ahead of the stack of the resumes of everybody else. And so that power referral, I cannot overemphasize, and unfortunately starts years ago, right? So it's really important, again, no matter what job it is, even as much as you hate it, and however you hate your boss, because they will talk to your boss as a reference. You want to make sure there's not a sniper in the weeds taking you out that you're not even aware of.
Definitely. So basically the current environment is very competitive, as you all say. So maybe 10 plus people are applying for the same position. So it's really important to have a very powerful personal value proposition and really present the why you, right? Why you the best candidate. Another challenging question is during a downturn, there are limited job openings. I may want to stay with my current function or industry because that's my strength. But if the options are limited, should I consider switch function or industry? And how can I increase my chance of success for the transition?
Yeah, you know, that one's interesting because there are some industries that are taking a hit right now. The whole share economy, you know, we're having to think twice about this. But there are some industries that are doing very well: healthcare, the supply chain, medical. And the skills that you build in your industry are very valuable and can be transferred to these others. And so I will go back to your value proposition on what are those skills that you bring to the table. And in your resumes and so forth, how do you transfer and sell those over to the industries? Take a look at those industries that are growing, because they're not, there's a lot that is not doing well and is struggling, but they're also, like I said before, there are jobs. And Erin, you probably know some of this too, because since you are doing staffing, you're seeing where the companies are hiring.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with Caroline. I think, you know, my first recommendation to everybody, right, is you got to feed the family. So whatever you do, if you can't find a job in your own sector, definitely aggressively look multiple sectors in parallel, right? But if given the opportunity and you have to change industries, I would definitely make sure, if at all possible, look for opportunities where you can enjoy what I call the slingshot effect, meaning that perhaps you come across laterally to a different role or even a slightly lesser role, either compensation or title, but it's hopefully with a fast-growing company and industry that's going rapidly so that you can propel yourself far more quickly than you would have been otherwise. So that would be my recommendation if you do have to make a change into a different industry, if given the choice.
Yeah, you know, and the other thing, I like the slingshot idea as well. A lot of people I talk to is like, yeah, I should update my resume. I will admit I fell into that thought process too. After I've left the Ninja Gym, it was like, yeah, I probably should update my resume, and I wasn't putting any urgency towards it. And then I randomly took a call from a recruiter, and I was like, hey, this sounds awesome, this role. And the recruiter's like, okay, send me over your resume. Well, you know what? I didn't have it done. And it took me 5 days to get that thing done. And this is not the time where you want to be reactive to be updating your resume. Get ahead of the curve and be proactive about it. Be ready, because the other thing that I've experienced having gone through these downturns is that the recruiting and HR is the first function to start growing back. And when we get hired, we're on the firing line and we cannot hire fast enough. And so with that in mind, when we start reaching out, we want to be ready and start pitching the people we are meeting to the hiring managers. So make sure your stuff is up to date. Even if you've been in your job for a while, you feel secure, get your resumes up to date, update your LinkedIn profile so that you're ready to go.
Thank you. Those are all great advice for people who are looking for a job in the current market. Career decision may need to be more prudent or conservative during a downturn. Global pandemic hit some company industry harder than the others. If some people feel their current job is at risk, how should they approach career movement under this environment?
Xiaojing, this is Aaron. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. So if you're looking at the prior poll, yeah, I would say a large number of you, are not necessarily actively looking, but kind of keeping an eye out. I would say if your job is potentially at risk with your current company, either because of financial stability or poor management, but you're concerned about confidentiality, I would cautiously start looking ASAP, meaning that you obviously have to be careful, right? And you don't necessarily want to get back to your management, but know that the job search process, I would assume that most of you are fairly senior people, or at least in terms of experience, it could easily take several months, right? Even in a good job market, to find the right role depending on your skill set. So I would definitely get there aggressively. As an example, LinkedIn obviously is an amazing tool, but one of the things I would make sure you do if you start updating your bios and stuff on your LinkedIn is make sure you turn off all of your notifications, as an example. Because otherwise all of your friends, bosses will get congratulations, Joe Smith just changed jobs or got a promotion, right? Which is not what you want to do. So I would say cautiously, and but again, I would aggressively network with your friends, as we had talked about earlier. If you're unemployed or you get laid off, and at this point, I would telegraph everybody, right? On your LinkedIn, you can say actively looking for jobs. I would tell all your friends, tell your bosses, tell your neighbors, because these are people that know and like you, hopefully, and they'll recommend you because they'll start hearing about things, and you want to have a massive network looking out for you. So those would be some things I would do. But again, in a situation where you're worried about your management, I would be very careful. And again, just be mindful of some of the social media to turn off the notifications. Caroline?
Yeah, I 100% agree with this. LinkedIn tries to be very helpful with all these notifications, but yeah, do turn them off. And do know also that they constantly roll out new things on the platform. So it is important, kind of like, how you twice a year, you check the batteries in your fire alarm. Twice a year, you should be checking your notification settings and privacy settings on these kind of things. But definitely, I would agree with what Aaron said, and update your stuff, and just be prepared, because you never know what's I don't want to say nothing is secure here, but things change, and things change quickly in these kind of pandemics. And so I would reiterate that just be ready to market yourself.
Thank you. Very practical linking tips. I hope the audience found it helpful. And Aaron, I think you mentioned before, is really in this environment, play it safe. So it's a very good reminder on cautious networking under certain situations. Now we're going to switching gear here. So we talk about how to find a job if you're looking or potentially looking. Not all companies are under financial stress, and you may not want to change job. How to best stay and perform at your current company in the new normal environment. We're going to launch our second polling question here, and I will let Wilson lead the second polling question here.
Yeah, for some reason the camera is not working. But yeah, the second question is, when we are transitioning into a new remote reworking environment, do you think your productivity? So there are three options you can choose: increase, about the same, or decrease. So let's give us a moment to think carefully about this and just make answer. Let us know. Thank you. Yeah, I think the result already come out that most people are pretty much choose about the same, close to the 50%. And for the rest of 34% people thinks it's going to be decrease. And for the rest of 20% shows it's increase. So let's get back to Xiaojing. Let us just analyze this result a little bit.
Thank you, Wilson. So that's a very interesting observation here as well. I think most people think is about the same. To me, about the same is already pretty good because we are adapting to a changing environment. That leads to our next topic is really company culture and working style is changing and evolving in the pandemic environment. How will performance measurement evolve? How can people show value contribution in a virtual remote environment? Eric, when did Apple start working from home? How did it go for you?
Yeah, I think I can share this my personal experience for the people who feels the productivity is decreased. Although I feel most of you probably already figured it out. So before the pandemic, I had never worked from home before. It's just my personal life working style. I prefer come to office. I think office have everything. It's perfect. So on the first week when pandemic started, and we received the order that office will completely shut down. Everyone need to carry their device, and you can actually take the chair if you want, but stay at home. And no one knows how long it will going to stay. It's a disaster for the first week for me. I never work from home, and I pay the rent but never use my place. I try to find a comfortable position for myself to stay in the couch or sit on the floor or even stay in the bed, but productivity never being as high as I wish to be, even with my desktop screen setup. So the first thing I learned is when something changes, this is about change management. When change happens, it's always good to take a break and think what you need. So I immediately asked for 2 days off, plus the weekend. It will be 4 days in total from my manager. I told him I need to think about how to set up my working environment so I can be more productive. And he totally support. I list a list of equipment that I need, includes a nice camera, the key lights, the keyboards that I need to use, and even the standing desk. I placed the order, picked up from from the local store, and I put them together during the weekend. I think that's the best decision I've ever made, because that's everything. Then I feel I start to slowly restore back my working experience or my working life style, daily routine. I think that's the best thing. And the second I learned is about communication. When we're in the office, people are around us, it's easier to ask questions from the analyst next to you or talk to your manager with a small conversation. But when you work from home, it's kind of hard to detect if people is available. Even you can ping someone on Slack, they may not get back to you, and they may in a meeting and they forget it. So I try to adopt a new style of communication, make it more flexible. A few tips I learned from my experiences. Number one, always turn on your camera. That's linked to another point I made. Make sure you feel comfortable, show yourself in front of a camera. I find when I turn on camera, people are more willing to share, even share the small things, and they tend to talk longer with you. Number two is try to adopt people's time. Unlike myself, people have different situations. Someone has kids at home, they have to cooking for the family. I noticed some of my team members always log off around the 4 or 5-ish so they can take care of their family, but they were back online later at night. So I try to adopt a flexible hours if I really want to talk to the people, and try not to fight for the busy time in the daytime. It's already short with the people I intend to meet. I sometimes meet people at the late night, if both of us agrees. I think that is a flexible working hours that I adopted. And number 3 is over communication. Over communication includes always repeat and confirm what you talk during the meeting. Just make sure people are on the same page. Some people are listening, but they don't have the same understanding or have the same level of understanding. And I also try to write meeting minutes and send the meeting note back to a Slack channel as a courtesy. And people start to follow you and make sure the communication is effective.
Okay, Eric. I think what you brought up, a lot of us can relate to. From my company, what I see from my company is we use the word over-communicate a lot since working from home. And be intentional. Be intentional to connect with people, to coordinate and collaborate. Communication is very important, more than ever before now. Michael, it's a busy time for HR operation during pandemic to keep employees safe, supported, and motivated. So what do you see from the HR side?
Yeah, thanks, Xiaojing. And happy to share some thoughts here. And I definitely echo Eric with kind of restoring that productivity and over communication, and all really good tips. I would say from a HR side, it's interesting, right? Because a lot of teams are trying to repivot priorities, and there might be changes to goals and what people might be working on. And so kind of in the midst of just a lot of these potential changes that might be happening with your management or with the team's goals, I think it's actually really important to anchor on a couple of things. So first one is really your job role expectations. So I'm not sure if folks here are clear, but every company will have a different type of system or process for evaluating your performance. And what's usually at the core of that is what's your job role expectation. So with that job role, there's usually 2 parts. There's a level as well as a ladder. And so, for example, you could be a level 3 software engineer. And so there's a level and then there's a ladder. And then with that job role, then there's an expectation based on what you do and how you do it. And so you could literally have 2 people on the exact same team, but if their job role expectations are different, they could do the same thing, but one could be exceeding expectations and one could totally be failing, right? And it's because just those expectations are different. So it's really important to make sure, if you haven't read what that looks like for you, to make sure you dig around, ask your team, figure out what those expectations are for you, and make sure you're clear on both the what and the how of what's expected based on your level and your job expectation. So again, priorities changing, it's really important to dock into that, because when your performance is being evaluated, it's going to be based on that metric. So the second tip I would say is, once you know that bigger picture, that foundation, is just be explicit about some of those expectations that you might be setting, and like just the communication. So for example, checking in with your manager or checking with your team about how you're doing. Instead of just waiting for that to come from your manager, I might actually set a cadence, say either once a month, once a quarter, just to say, hey, how am I doing? Are the things I'm working on aligned? Especially because if the team's priorities might be changing, you want to have more explicit touch points like that to just make sure you're on track. And so making that very intentional and building that in, I think I would recommend that. I do have a small tip for parents or folks that are juggling a lot of things at home around setting expectations. So if your company does offer certain leaves, cares leaves, things like that, and if you find that you could potentially use that to take care of some things that you have going on, but also then be able to better work on the things you're working on, I would recommend taking that. The reason why I say that is because your performance evaluation is based on the amount of time worked. Now, if you're trying to squeeze all your work in to the same amount of time, but your productivity is being impacted because you have other things you have to attend to, rather than just try to like squeeze it all in and potentially not get the same amount of output, if you take the leave, it helps to set the expectation during the performance management conversation, where people could say, well, you have to really recalibrate a sense of their output based on their duration of time worked, right? I think that gives you that ability to recalibrate that expectation rather than for folks just to expect you to be performing at the full output if you were working kind of full time. And then the last thing I'll say is managers really do need visibility in what you're doing, especially in these times where, as Eric mentioned, you can't just talk to people, you're not bumping into folks. Make sure that you have a really good practice of capturing notes, either during your one-on-one or kind of what you're doing. Just have a ritual or a practice where you're explicitly capturing that, because chances are your managers, when it comes to performance review time, they're going to need to, you know, represent you in front of other managers, and they'll need information, they'll need materials, and you can really help them do that if you capture robust notes on kind of what you're working on, and that way they'll be able to reference that. And you know, they already have to keep track of a lot in a remote environment, so you want to make their job easier by just having a really good practice of capturing all that you do and making sure that you can have that ready for the perf conversations.
Thank you, Michael. So from the polling result previously, so we do see a percent of people is decreasing productivity. So for those who are decreasing productivity given the COVID-19 environment, they may be high performer in the past. What I see from my company, my team side, is one of the most challenging the COVID-19 present is really kind of homeschooling while working from home. So what's your advice for people like that, right? So basically they are high performer before, but they need to deal with some challenges and with homeschooling.
Is that specific for me, Xiaojing, there?
Yeah, if you can chime in, Michael, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think for folks who are doing homeschooling, I would say one of the things that I've seen that actually has been really helpful is, again, communicating kind of what's going on for you. I found that a lot of managers actually may be in similar situations where they're also trying to figure this out. And so to the extent that you're working on this or having some challenges trying to sort this out, just being transparent with your manager sometimes could lead to more trust building, because they might be in a situation and they can really understand that. But unless you voice it, they might not know that's something that you're also working on. So first, making sure that's explicit and you're having that conversation with your manager. Second, I would say if there's potential support communities at work, there might be employee resource groups or other groups that's more focused on parents. I know, at least at Waymo, I know there's a parents at Waymo. So to the extent that there's communities like that, that you might be able to also get some tips, that would be super helpful. A third one, this is pretty minor, but actually I found it pretty helpful, is sometimes there might be noise in the background depending on your space and your kids. And you know, I find that sometimes parents get pretty self-conscious when they're in a meeting if they can't find like a quiet space. I would invest in a really good pair of noise canceling headphones that actually cancels out the noise externally. And so you can have faith that when you're having that meeting, you know, really important VP meeting or whatever, that you know, like, noise is going to happen that's really going to distract you there, and you can have faith in that. And then, yeah, I think those are a couple that come to mind for now.
Thank you, Michael. So I think that's really good advice. And also for the audience here, remember you're not alone in this situation. So keep the dialogue going, speak up, and speak up is more important than ever before. And advocate for yourself, manage expectations, and get aligned with your manager on the evolving priorities. All very good point here. So the next question is, there are many situations people happen to start a new job or new role during the pandemic remote working period. Onboarding and making introductions may be very challenging given everybody is working from home, nobody is in the office. What's your advice on this situation and how to start off on a good footing for people like that?
Yeah, I can start. My situation is very unique, but I'm not intentionally changed job during the pandemic, but I started interview and received the offer before that, and everything get closed out during the pandemic, and to be specific, 2 weeks after shutdown. And so pretty much when I left office, I stay with my old team. In the future, and I come back, I go into my new team. During that time, I have to run my transition. It's an internal transfer, so it's actually much easier than most of you may experience. But I think it can be a good example or share some of my experience. I think number one thing is very important is you're not alone. You're not the only person get onboarded or change or have to shift, switch in a new role, new project in your company. So people are experiencing the same challenge. If you feel frustrated, someone else may feel frustrated as well. So really take this as an opportunity to shine. When I say that, it's because someone find, oh, it's really a challenge to do a transition. I don't really want to invest that much time, or there's not enough time for me to learn from my old whoever transitioned to me or transition to. So let's just forget about that and answer the question case by case, and we will eventually survive. I think that's okay to do, but if you really want to impress your manager or you really want to make your shine, the most important thing is try to be more organized. And if you can hold the normal standard during this challenge time, you probably already exceed expectation. So think about if you are trying really, really, really hard to find a way to outperform, that might be the best timing. You just hold your standard and do exactly as manager expected, and I guarantee you are exceeding the expectation already. Number two is communication. I find out I talk about communication a lot, but I think communication is really key. Over communication is important. During my first 2 weeks, I put 30 minutes time every day with my manager just to check in, make sure I'm on the right track. I'm super new to the team. I don't know what that team needs or how that team communicate. I ask all the stupid questions up front. Imagine those questions will eventually come to you, but it's always better if you ask earlier, because you have a privilege as a green hand people. You are new to the team. You can always use this as an excuse. So try to use the skill of over communication when you are transitioning to a new team. Find time with your manager until both of you feel comfortable and gain the trust. What I find right now is after 2 months, my manager actually even don't need to talk to me, but he said, yeah, I think I know what you're thinking. Go ahead and go to a meeting. And that's the best outcome you could have through that over communication, because you make your manager feel comfortable that you are on the same page, you two are on the same page, and he can delegate things to you. And as the earlier you can get this into this situation, the better you can go through the transition.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Erick's saying from kind of an onboarding perspective. Since being in HR, we had to really repivot and do remote onboarding for all the new hires, and it's tough. This is basically HR teams haven't done this before, managers haven't done this before, leaders haven't done this before. So the big takeaway is that if you need certain things, you got to really be extra deliberate, because those other teams that typically would do that support may not have it all down for figuring out this new environment, how to customize new workflows or support models for this. So there's a bit of lag time right now in this environment. So know yourself. So my three thoughts here. One is know your style. So what do you need personally? Some people want to feel like I have really solid relationship and trust in order to kind of feel comfortable. Other people might feel like I need a more structure and process and kind of that level of detail. There's like potentially up to like, just kind of 4 different types of leadership styles that might impact what your personal needs are. And so know that like, hey, what's my need? What has helped me thrive in the past? And how can I either ask for that from my manager or just kind of make sure you supplement your own onboarding, whatever the company might be providing with one of those things that you personally need. So I would say that's the first one. I would say second is know your situation. So I remember seeing that there were, I think, 34% of the folks potentially looking outside of their company right now. So I would say there's a couple of scenarios based on your situation. You could either be in the same company and you're wanting to switch to a new function. You could be wanting to just switch to a new company, but stay in your function. Or you could do both. I'm wanting to switch to a new company and a new function. What I would say is doing both right now is pretty tough. So if you're considering that like double jump scenario, just, you know, put that bookmark in your head. You gotta be extra diligent there. But I'd say based on whatever scenario you're in, there might be a slightly different strategy you might want to take. So for example, say you're staying in the same company, but you're doing a different function. I would say because the function's different, that focusing on competence and really ramping up in that function, establishing your credibility is going to be really helpful. You have a bit of that relationship already with the company, and you kind of know the culture. So I'd say, you know, really indexing on that competence would be really helpful. Now, if you're going off to a new company and you're staying, you're same function, same type of job profile, then I'd say focus on relationship building, because you're going to have that foundation already in your work. And so more informal coffees, getting to know the culture, that's all going to be extra hard in the remote environment. And so I would index even more heavily on that relationship building. Last thing I would say is that if you are a leader or a manager and you're going to potentially need to take over a team or do change management or things like that, that it's actually going to be a bit extra challenging, because again, you're not going to have that in-person type of interaction. So if you're a new leader, new manager, make sure you're extra deliberate in kind of building those relationships and trying to understand the cultural currents. And then last thing I would say to wrapping up quickly is make sure you have some quick wins when you start. What I mean by quick wins is if you think about the things that you could output to a team, you could think of maybe the consulting 2x2 matrix. There's kind of low effort to high effort, and then there's low value to high value. And a quick win is something that is on the quadrant of like lower effort but higher value. So to the extent that you could identify those quickly, maybe through your coffees and through other means, and if you're in that new company, new role, making sure that you deliver on a couple of those quickly, I think can really help establish your credibility in this new place. So those are a couple of thoughts I have.
Thank you both. Great point here. We probably all can feel it. Pandemic is reshaping our working environment. Based on a Gartner survey, 74% of the companies plan to permanently shift to more remote work post-COVID-19. Facebook and Twitter is already doing that. So we all need to think about the implications. The winners will be the one who can adapt fast and take advantage of it. Now it's time for our third polling question. I will let Casey lead this polling question.
The third question is, do you think there will be structural change? And yes, no, or not too sure due to this global pandemic. Can now take your time to answer the question. And here's the result. Do you think there will be structural or organization change in your company due to global pandemic situation? 41% say yes, and 24% say no, and 34% say not too sure. Back to you, Xiaojing.
Thank you, Casey. So what we see here is that the most voting is yes. And I think that's not surprising because the environment is changing and the company needs to adapt to the change here. So during a downturn, companies sometimes need to make tough business decisions on resources. Cost cutting, restructuring, what are the main consideration factors for stay versus let go decisions? Carla, I know you have some real life experience. Can you share with the audience here?
Yeah. So the real life experience came back in 2008, 2009 during the financial crisis. And this is when I was working for Accenture. And I was part of a 4,000 person global recruiting team. And during that financial crisis, our leadership made a decision around how we're going to address the costs. We were losing a lot of clients, or the clients were slowing down with respect to the projects we were on. And I learned a lot during that period. Honestly, I didn't agree. The decision came down to reduce the recruiting workforce by half, so take it from 4,000 to 2,000. And I didn't agree. And what I learned is, quite frankly, they're not asking me to agree. This was a leadership decision that was occurring at the top level, and every organization was taking a hit. And what I learned was the role I had was, how do you go along with it? And so when I moved into that space on, okay, how do you got to execute on this? And one of the first things was really understand the rationale. Like, our leaders do not just come up with this stuff out of the blue. There is some rationale that is behind their decision. And the more you can ask the why behind there and have them explain it back in a very nice way, it helps you understand it better. What I had learned during this time was it was a complete cost play for us. And it was also an exercise in fairness. At the top, they weren't going to say this organization is more valuable than this organization versus another. They were doing it straight across the board. That made things a little bit easier to process. And also understanding, again, our leadership is making these decisions. It's a business decision. It is not personal. So once you get through that rationale and onboarded with what is going on at the top, start working on solutioning around this. So I was in a role where I was actually asked to execute on this and bring it down from 4,000 to 2,000 and do a line-by-line play on every single person. And so when I was working with the recruiting directors on this, we had to talk through, what are our decision-making around this? What is Europe doing versus the Americas versus Asia? And then country by country, how are we making these decisions? And past performance was definitely a factor when we did this. We were looking at how well they delivered in the past. And we were asking our leadership to ring fence and protect the strong performers. But I will also say that wasn't the only factor in helping us make our decision. We were also looking at, how do we work with people to bungee or transfer to another organization if that's an option. As your leadership is talking to you, about something like that, it's not, we don't want you. It's, again, we were really trying to come up with ways to keep as many people as possible. I heard Michael talk about also, if there's opportunity to take a leave, you may want to jump on that right now. Because it helps set the expectations around performance management. It helps you transition into the stress of working at home with a lot of kids and different balls to juggle. And we were asking people also very proactively, would you like to take a 3-month, 6-month leave? And again, it had nothing to do with, we're going to fire you, but again, it was a decision that we are trying to execute on based on our org structure. And the final thing I'd say around this is, in your role, and I've heard both Eric and Michael talk about this earlier, in terms of looking on where you can shine, be as flexible as possible. You may have been hired to do A, B, C, and they're asking you to do K, L, and M. X, Y, and Z would have been good, but K, L, and M is random and odd, and you're uncomfortable. This is change, and I think we all have to adapt to the change. Hear what leadership is asking you to do and figure out how to get it done. I bring this up because what I saw was, back in 2008, was when it came time to doing the cuts in our team, We did have a very high performer, someone who had been with us since the inception of the team. Like, she had been around longer than I had, but probably after on every project we were asking her for help on, she was uncomfortable, she was pushing back, she was asking if there are other people to do it. And at the end of the day, it was a really tough decision from our leadership, but she ended up on the cutting block. And to this day, it is something that actually has strained our relationship. But I know it was a business decision. It had nothing to do with do they like you? Are we friends? They're making a business decision. So again, be as flexible as possible. If you're uncomfortable with what they're asking you to do, reach out to your network, reach out to your peers, and get the help to solution around delivering on what they need. No, that was a little long, Xiaoping, but hopefully that kind of gives you perspective on what happens and what's going through your leadership's mind in terms of doing some of these org structures.
Yeah, actually would love to add to Caroline a little bit on the being flexible piece. I definitely see that, when there's potential roles that need to be shaved, that sometimes there might be other opportunities within the company where people get considered, or there might be like a period where people might be able to look for an internal transfer opportunity before there's, folks that get let go. And so if to the extent that your company maintains an internal resume that's only accessible for folks internally, or in your performance management, the things you write about, I would actually encourage, say, if you're in a specialized function like sales or marketing, to the extent that there might be more general skills that you can also highlight as well. Project management, program management, change management, like these are slightly broader type things. And to the extent that those could get highlighted in some of either perf or internal resumes, at least from the HR side, I know that sometimes gets considered as part of, hey, could this person be flexible and considering a pocket of roles in this part of the company that we need, but we're trying to cut down on this part. And so I've seen that play out, and when we've had to shut down a site, and there was consideration for how to potentially, like, is this an opportunity that these people could potentially move into? So yeah, just the additional thing about how to make yourself come off more flexible when it's being considered by either leaders or HR people.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about these two. I think we discussed during our preparation about taking extra responsibilities. I'm always a believer of helping others equals help yourself. It's important that you understand someone else's situation and offer the help. By offering help, there are many different ways. When you, like Caroline and Michael mentioned, when your peers has some difficult challenge or whatever situation, maybe someone has to leave the job because of family situation, and then your boss asks you to step in to take extra responsibility. If you can, definitely say yes. Not only this is for your job security because you know more, but also it's a way to demonstrate you are a team player, you are supporting the team. I want to get this to one extra mile or more extents that I recently learned. During a business situation, sometimes you have to collaborate between different business units as well. In a traditional mindset, people will say, stay with your team, do what you can, do what you know, and try to throw the ball to someone else. So leave the risk out of your squad. But during that situation, because communication is extremely difficult, believe it or not, but it's even difficult to put everyone into one situation, whiteboarding a end-to-end flow. If you want to do even that, be extremely difficult. What I learned is super helpful is go extra mile, reach out to your business partner, share what you learned. It's about communication. Share what you know. Over communication, not only internally but also externally, and sometimes you will find out very helpful, and they may be able to help you as well. I think that pandemic situation is really special and difficult, but also an opportunity for us to rethink how we collaborate and teamwork, work together. If you can follow these, I guarantee you, when you get back to the work, you will be popular because people find out you help them during the tough time.
Thank you all. These are all great advice. So it may sound like we're sharing some brutal facts here, but I think we all need to understand and be clear about the why and how in order to navigate through this content here. So we actually about time for the panel. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. So today we have Casey and Wilson via Q&A moderator. I think you already started submitting your question through the Q&A, the box here. So I think Casey and Wilson, I will.
I'm going to start. We have a total of 5 questions. You're welcome to put more in. And I'm going to answer one of the questions first because I'm very passionate about that. One of the question posed was how to stay away from self-doubt. And this is one of my favorite topics. And I always tell people, this is a famous quote. I didn't say it, but I quoted somebody say, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever would. So never doubt yourself. And one way to stay away from self-doubt, as Micheal Lin earlier said, know yourself. If you know yourself, you trust yourself, and always follow your passions. Always remember your goal and your dream. Then once you have that guideline, you should not have any self-doubt. So Susan, no doubt, because you don't want to kill your dreams. So I pass it to Wilson for another question.
Yes, actually, thanks. Susan also asked another question about like, what do you typically look for when interviewing a candidate? So I think this question is very good. If we can have this honor to ask Aaron, would you please just give some sharing?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, first off, thank you for asking the question. You know, as Caroline said, I think a big part of the interview process is a lot of the preparation work you do prior to the interview. And so I would say, you know, making sure you have a crisp resume, perhaps run through your friends, make sure you research the company, make sure you research the person, and to see if you have common connections that, again, would stand tall for you, that you can, as appropriately, drop their name as someone that they can check on a blind basis. Caroline, any additional insights?
You know, this is a good question and it's hard to say because it depends. You know, it really depends on what we're looking for the role. What I would recommend doing as part of the prep work is if you have the job description for the role that you're interviewing for, take a look at it and say, you know what, if you were the hiring manager, what would you want to know about this person? And, you know, it doesn't have to be really thorough and exhaustive, but if you just said, you know, let me look at this job description, what are the 3 things as a hiring manager you would want to know about the candidate? Put those down and then match it against, well, going back to your value proposition, what do I bring to the table and how do I sell into this? That at least gives you some insight to understand where the interviewers are coming from to help you with answering those questions. Again, the question's very hard to answer because it's so very general, but that's how I would take it because when you go through the interview process, I may be talking to a recruiter. The recruiter at the beginning of the process is going to look for something from me different from what the hiring manager is versus what a maybe skills assessor is going to ask for. So this is why I say take a look at who's interviewing you and take a look at the job description and figure out what do you think they may want to hear.
And one last comment I want to add to Caroline's thought is I know a lot of people haven't interviewed in a long time. And one thing that I always recommend to people is go to like Amazon.com, find the best books on being an interviewer, meaning that as a hiring manager, you know, the top 20 questions, top 100 questions, find the best books, buy 5 or 10 of them, and read those books so you can put yourself in the shoes of the hiring manager so you know how to better prepare your answers as well. Just a sidebar tip.
Wonderful. So maybe the next 2 questions, David, you might want to open up the mic to an audience to ask.
Great, sounds good. These next few questions comes from Denise. Denise, I'm going to promote you a panelist so you can ask your question. Denise, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I finally unmuted myself. First of all, thank you to Xiaojing and the panel for some great insights and pragmatic tips. I've really enjoyed them, even though I'm not looking for a new role. I have two questions that are related. So Carolyn and Aaron both talked about the importance of networking as much as possible if you're looking for a new role, especially outside your company. And I know that's going on already. My question is there a right way or correct way to approach somebody versus a wrong way that would end up being annoying? And secondly, what happens if you are approaching somebody with whom you've not had contact in a long time and you're not quite sure what the status of your relationship with that person? Thank you.
Interesting. I'll jump in first, and I know these guys are going to have more to add. When I think about this, I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong way. I think there's, the basic things around courtesy and respect are in play here. And I think it's important to be courteous, nice, engaging, personable, and then straight to the point so that it's not taking up too much time. A lot of things, like I've learned in this environment, I'm asking, hey, can I have a favor to ask? And I wait for them to say yes to get them in the mode and mindset that they want to help out. But sometimes if I don't get the immediate response, I will just do a quick follow-up with, I hope you don't mind me asking, feel free to say no, like give them an out if they would like it, if they need to take it. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. The wrong way is not to reach out when you need to, in my opinion. So go for it. But again, think about the courtesy and respect. The other part here in terms of how do you approach someone who you may not have had a good relationship with in the past, or maybe someone that you haven't been in touch with for a while. Again, I would say the same things apply. We are at a time right now where I think people are more or less forgiving. And, there may have been conflict in the past, but at the same time, I think everyone is in a space, or a lot of people are in a space where you want to help each other out. And the thing here is you're accountable for your own actions. So reach out in a very nice manner and let them decide on how they want to respond to you. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, you won't know. So that would be my advice on those two questions.
Thank Carolyn. This is Aaron. So just additional data points. I agree 100% with Caroline. And keep in mind that the search business, I anticipate, is going to be relatively slow the next couple months, and has been slow the last couple. So I've had a lot of time on my hands. So to give you a little bit of context, I probably reached out to 2,000 people. I've first connections with over 5,000 people, but I've reached out to probably 2,000 of those people in the last few months. Keep in mind, I've only gotten responses from maybe 300 of them, so maybe 15% response. So one, don't take it personally if people don't respond. I reached out via both LinkedIn, and when I do an email, I look at some of my emails. I'm embarrassed to say I actually have emails going back over 10 years, and I'll actually take that email and then kind of reply to that email with their new email address, so they know that we actually had some dialogue. So then they understand a little bit of the context. So I've been trying to give them a little bit of history, and even when I do reach out to them via LinkedIn, I say, hey, it's been a long time since we spoke about so-and-so 10 years ago. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people will remember you, and they'll respond back as, oh my God, I can't remember when we last spoke. And then, so again, one, don't take it personally. Two, reach out to a lot more people than you anticipate. And a lot of people won't respond because they are distracted. A lot of people aren't necessarily looking at LinkedIn. So you may have to, as Caroline said, maybe, wait a little bit, text them, let's see, hopefully you can find if you're connected to them at a first level, their personal email address is in their contact section. So you can send them a direct email. Again, if there's some contextual emails you have from the past, again, forward that just to kind of shake the tree a little bit. So again, please don't be shy. And again, you're listening from a shameless recruiter. But those would be some things I would add.
And I have something to add to it as well. I think it's all start from relationship, right? So, but sometimes relationship is a building relationship. You have to start from somewhere to start to build it. So when we start to build the relationship, I think this question is really switch from yourself, the angle from yourself to the other side. It's not about what you need or you need a job, you need to find a job. It's more about what the company needs and what the recruiter, even what the recruiter needs, because I do see recruiter reach out to me as well, although I'm not actively looking, but it's mutual interest, right? So what's in the other side best interest, and how you can contribute and add value to it, and how you can help others in that way, help yourself. So it's all come to your judgment of the situation and also your rate of people, what's in their best interest. So that's my quick point here.
Great.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I can add a little bit, but not sure if it's relevant. It reminds me my old day life when I was on the sales team. As a part of sales training, we want to make sure a salesperson can ask a question to the customer in a polite way. And this is a little small technique I learned at that time, and I used for my entire life. I want to share with everyone. So doing that, there's a 3P position, permission, and probe. I always follow that step when I try to open a conversation with someone I don't know, so I'm not that close or haven't talked for a long time. I think a probe and the permission might be very easy. Most people say, "Hey, are you there? Hey, can we talk?" So that is a part of the permission. But what I find, a lot of people forget the position. Or they move the position at the last end. They ask, "Hey, are you there? I want to talk to you." Then they start ask, "Those are my questions." Imagine you are on the other side. Someone pop up a message, say, "Hey, are you there? Can we talk? Can I have 5 minutes?" It's really difficult for you to make decisions or think, what should I talk? What this about? Should I say yes? Should I say no? If you can move this to the beginning, always setting the stage, talk about the situation, tell them the purpose, why, and then asking for, "Hey, can we have 5 minutes?" What I find is the success rate will go a lot higher. If you haven't practiced this skill, that could be a good one for you to try to reach out to someone you haven't talked for a while.
And just to close on this, those are really good points too, because I think the other thing I remember when we worked at LinkedIn, and we talk about the power of the connection and the network, there was something that we would hear a lot as recruiters, like, and it's similar to sales, but it's like, no one likes it cold, meaning a cold outreach, which is just the, "Hey, you get a cold call, the cold call." When you personalize things and when you tie it back to, "Hey, the last conversation we had," and you bring back that personalization, that's a really good way to start the reach out, because it helps people feel remembered and warm, and it gets them in the right mindset that, "Hey, I do want to help you out, or if I do, or at least see if I can help you out, or at least reconnect." So, I'll go back to no one likes it cold. So bring in that personability to that reach out as well.
Great. I think we had one last question from Peter Chu. I think he just fell off. But his question was around, if you realize if you're being discriminated against in any way, what can you do in an existing position or while interview? What should you be doing?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Caroline, did you want to go?
No, I'll let the HR guy go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think what will be important, because that's a pretty serious claim to potentially lodge, and so I would say it's important to have a couple of things in mind. One is what's the right channel? Because there's different folks where you might want to float this to depending on your position. Say if you're a candidate versus you're an employee, like the channels that you have available are going to be different. So you want to understand like what are those channels and what might be appropriate. The second is making sure you have the facts. So if you feel like that's happening in the real time, make sure you capture the time, the person that you're talking to, as much verbatim of like what's going on as possible, and just like documenting a lot, because getting all this stuff on paper is going to be super important, and like the context and like why this triggers certain things, and kind of getting all of that. And so once you then have those two things, then if your sense is like you might be getting discriminated, then you'll I think it really depends then what's the situation that you're in at that point, which is like, if you're a candidate, did you just get rejected, or are you still in the process, or if you're an employee, like so I think depending on your situation at that time too, the course of action that you may want to take might be a little different as well. So it's a little hard to like generalize when there's not a very specific example, but I would say like, say you're just an employee and that's something that you're feeling that might be happening, then there could be 2 or 3 channels. One that might be anonymous, like a email that you might be able to send to report something. One would be potentially to launch an investigation, and that might be with a people relations type of ER person. And so if that's something you'd like to pursue, make sure that then you just do a little bit of research on your company's procedure, some of the code of conduct that you might want to raise as a part of why you might be feeling a certain way. So just do your research, have all that ready, and then, yeah, put it through those formal channels. But again, this is pretty case by case. So that's the most general I can get it so far.
And it very well said, Michael. Those are good points, because I would have gone to the document, and document right away, because at the end of the day, the recall needs to be there, and it may take some time to process what exactly is going on, and it may take time to be able to articulate it and figure out what you want to do. So I would really put the emphasis on the documentation.
All right, there is 2 more questions being posted. So I'm going to ask, because it's really, as Carolyn, because it's related to LinkedIn. Denise asked the question, how important and valuable is a LinkedIn recommendation to recruiter and hiring manager to recruit and the hiring manager and the recruiting manager? LinkedIn recommendation.
The LinkedIn recommendation, Denise, I'm thinking you're referring to on the LinkedIn portal. There's an area where you can ask people to write recommendations about you. And on this thing, this has been around for a while. What I've heard LinkedIn talk about is it's not something on the product side that they're working on enhancing or building. It was something that early on when the product first came out, they thought this would be good to have. And what they've realized is anyone can write a recommendation, and the recommendation stays there forever and ever. So, I even think if I look on my profile, there's a recommendation from 2006, and I can't let it go away. So that's the product side. From the recruiter hiring manager side, honestly, it's not, if it's there, we look through it. And it can only enhance your profile, but I don't think it's ever there as a decision-making tool. It's there to go, oh, this is someone that knows the person and can write and attest to them. And it just helps build upon your current profile and your skills and your background. But I don't think it's a must-have that's going to make or break you. And I'll also defer to Michael and Aaron, who are in this space as well and see these things. and throw it out to you guys too on, do you use that portion of LinkedIn?
So Caroline, good question. So the answer is I had in the past. I've done a very poor job of it the last 10 plus years. As a matter of fact, I just asked someone who's a top VC who gave me a great recommendation in 2007. And I begged him to refresh it, and he just did it this week. So I'm now, because I'm making a much more concerted effort of rebranding myself, I'm going back and actually asking people that are respected in the industry to give me a recommendation. So the answer is today, yes. Several years ago, I was lazy, but now everything counts.
And that's interesting perspective too, in terms of when we talked about the value proposition and what you bring to the table. I do think if you go through and look for the higher level and respected industry leads to help you with your online branding, it can only work to your advantage.
Absolutely.
Good idea.
Yeah, I want to add two questions actually to Caroline and Aaron here. It's a tactical linking question to add on to this one. So when you guys as a recruiter or on the recruiting team, when you guys, I think Aaron, you mentioned you use LinkedIn a lot. So when you search, what are the keywords? What are the really important things? Like we need to, as a candidate, right? We need to make it stand out and make it most searchable for you, and so we can come up on the list.
I'll answer just generally and then specific, right? So as a general rule of thumb relative to your LinkedIn bio, you definitely want to be search engine optimized, right? So for instance, if you're focusing on a role or companies in artificial intelligence, you want to make sure wherever appropriate and as many times as possible to make sure AI, artificial intelligence, anything that's relevant to your target shows up. So I think that's important. Keep in mind that from a search firm perspective, which is different than perhaps HR, is a lot of the clients, when they hire me, they're very specific. So I want someone from LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, or whoever that are doing these specific areas of work in these specific groups. So my work is super targeted, but I think in other companies, it's much general. But again, for my work, it's usually very narrowly defined. But I would say SEO, your bio, resume is always a great thing.
Yeah. This is, go ahead.
Go for it.
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was just thinking, I think the keywords will probably want to match what exactly you're trying to do. So, and I say that in that, say you're currently looking for a role, then potentially, at least in my experience, I think having potentially slightly broader keywords, project management or manager or operations, like certain things like that, that might be a little more fungible, might allow you to get more hits in certain different types of roles. But say you are wanting to position yourself to be an industry expert and only be kind of hired for certain types of roles, then you'll maybe want to research certain kind of papers in your industry that are in the areas that you want, and making sure you find certain keywords that are really important in that subject matter expert area that you've done, and making sure that gets highlighted, because as Aaron said, some of these searches could get fairly specific. And so if you really do want to shine in an industry, like you want to make sure that the papers and the research areas, like those are the things that are those keywords from that is in your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, then the only other thing I'd add to this in terms of the search and the relevance, this is something like LinkedIn has a product team and an engineering team dedicated to how do you, how does this search engine work? And when a recruiter is typing in these keywords, sometimes you're getting back a lot of different resumes. And so then priority is how do you get yourself bumped to the top? I will do the emphasis on be active on the platform. The more active you are on the platform, either like logging in, clicking on articles, liking things in your feed, clicking on jobs, the more active you are, the higher priority that relevance engine will give you into the search. And it will also start dumping you or putting you in different categories so that it will help the recruiters decide, like, if you're how likely are you to respond? You know, they may go after that because it's a quicker response versus going to someone who is passive. So I would be very active on the platform. Update your profile every now and then to show that you're, you know, working it. And when you respond to recruiters, try to do that quickly as well, because we're recording, or it's being recorded as well.
Thank you. So Wilson and Casey, I think we need to close up here. We're about time.
Yes, so pretty much we have the final questions in the Q&A. We just quickly like to ask the panel's opinion about how can I build a broader business when my job is narrowly focused on technical skills. I think that's a very common question for many engineers, especially engineers here nowadays. Can we just have each of you just have a quick couple seconds of sharing? Michael, do you want to go first?
I'm just trying to make sure I'm answering the right question. So the question is, how do I make sure I broaden out my appeal if, say, I'm in a very narrow area? Is that?
Yeah. Like, for example, I'm engineering. For example, if I want to do some like product management roles or even like a business sales role, like how can I just build up the broader business case for this? Yeah.
High level thought is you definitely want to kind of stand your ground, know kind of your value proposition, right? So you do have the engineer role, so that's going to go for you. And so what can you do that would be engineering plus something that would actually make it an extra selling point? You don't want to just say, I'm going to put aside engineering and I'm going to go a full pivot into sales, because that's not going to be your competitive advantage. But say if I say, I'm an engineer that does project management really well, therefore I could do technical project manager type roles, that would be really compelling, right? Or I have engineering skills, I want to do sales, I could do sales, I could do training training for folks who potentially sell products that are more engineering heavy, right? But making sure that you like honor like your current experience and what you bring, and kind of find that small overlap into the area that you want to get into, and have that kind of hybrid position that might kind of really make you an even more stellar candidate because you have that background.
That's absolutely great to us. Thanks. Eric, do you have anything like to share?
Yeah, I think business acumen was built through experience. If you can broaden your network and communication and collect all the experiences, it will naturally come to you. So my learning is I transit through different roles from sales, business analyst, financial analyst, system analyst, data scientist. I still keep in touch with every leaders or people I respect in the area. I have a quarterly touch base with my boss back to when I was in the sales role. I have a quarterly touch base with people I know in China, sits in China for the finance of the region. By talking to them, you do not necessarily need to solve a specific problem, but by talking to them about what they are experiencing, what you see, and exchange ideas, naturally you start to grow the business acumen about the industry or about the company. Because I only stayed at Apple, a lot of topics is related to Apple, but that's the way you can get more experience. I would imagine it would be the same if you try to build this network outside your company too.
Yep, thank you. So Xiaojing, let's back to you.
Thank you. So we're closing out here on the panel. Our panelists provided great insight and advice on how to navigate your career during the global pandemic today. To summarize what we discussed is networking and making connections are very important, more so than ever before in the virtual remote environment. Find creative ways to make it work. Remote working is becoming the new normal. Adapt to it and use it to your advantage. Be mindful about your company's strategic initiative and priorities. Be proactive to align yourself and add value to it. I hope you find this panel relevant and helpful, and thank you our panelists here for taking time today. I'm going to turn it back to David. I think David has some MontyJ announcement, and he will close out this session.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was a fantastic panel. I'm really glad, and thank you so much for volunteering your time and energy to support our community. I think it's a really important, especially during these challenging times. And I want to let everyone know on the call right now that we have some upcoming events. So obviously, our mentorship open houses are reopening. If you know anyone, have friends or family that you think would benefit from the program as well, please let them know. Our program is driven roughly 80% through referrals. So it is through you guys that we continue to grow our community. Some other upcoming events that we're also looking at in this virtual series. We're going to have Deloitte. So they've been advising the Global 100 on how to thrive in COVID. So you can learn from now, like the leaders of the world advising great companies on how to win. And then how does that apply to your careers? I think these are really important, like strategic alignment topics that you can get more insights on. The other one is Tony Huang. We're going to do a board-to-board interview series with him. He's an venture investor. We have a technology and biosciences forum coming on. So this is like the newest technologies that are impacting that intersection. We're going to do an interesting series, hopefully coming up, on how to best interview. And what we're going to do is actually we're going to take some people from our mentorship family that have been hiring managers in the past and then put them on the spot. We're going to ask them, how did they look for candidates? What process was that from? And I think this is a great part of which we can get our community engaged on learning from each other on best practices, especially many of us have been hiring others. Carol Carpenter, if you're familiar with her, she used to be a VP of Google Cloud. She has now moved on and is now CMO of VMware. This is congratulations to her. That's a great win for her. We're going to be conducting a board-to-board interview series with her as well. And then our Peter Chu as well, who is also on our call as well. I'm going to be doing an interview series with him as well, just on his experience on venture investing, being an executive, and then also being a mentor here at the MJ family as well. So a lot of upcoming events. Keep logged on. We're going to shoot these dates out pretty soon. And lastly, obviously, I want to thank our sponsor, Deloitte, for making sure that these series can continue. Thank you guys for joining us today. Stay safe, shelter in place, and we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys very much. See ya.